You're listening to Secrets for Scaling, a Gecko Board podcast that explores the growth secrets of successful founders and CEOs. For this episode, we spoke with Josh Pigford, founder and CEO of Baremetics. Hey Josh, welcome back to Secrets for Scaling.
Hey, cool, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we already chatted once a while back, last fall. You chatted with Laura for our written version of Secrets for Scaling. But for new listeners, can you share what Baremetics is, who your customers are, and what your business model is?
Yep. So Baremetics provides analytics for businesses, generally around the revenue side of things. So anything to do with money and customers and the way that customers give you money. So for like subscription companies, for instance, that would be MRR, lifetime value, churn, things like that. Customers are small to medium-sized subscription-based companies. Typically, that's SaaS companies, but that can also be something like a co-working space or like a gym or something. Anybody with sort of subscription revenue, and our business model is just like that. I mean, subscription. So we charge a monthly fee based on the size of your business, generally speaking, and then we've got some additional ways additional services that you can tack on for an additional fee too.
And how big is the company today in terms of team and traction?
So we are at 8 people, and then we're doing I guess it was last month, we passed $1 million ARR, and then that's made up from about 750 customers or something like that, 780, somewhere around there.
Wow. Congrats on the growth.
Thank you.
So last time you and Laura chatted, your big number one goal was to reach profitability, and you did that, which is awesome. Looking back, what were the biggest contributors, whether they're decisions, tactics, or strategies, or something else for reaching that goal?
I don't know. I definitely would not say decisions, only because I feel like anything that we did, it did not do anything, like frustratingly so. It just sort of, like if you look at our growth chart, it's just this like straight line basically, but not in like a straight up line, just this like slow, like it would be an easy bike ride up this hill. And it just annoyed me to no end. But I mean, the fact that we got there, I think if anything, it was probably just because we stuck with it and didn't try anything so insane that it like put us out of business. So I don't know. We just wouldn't die. Maybe that was
persistence.
Was it. Yeah.
That's interesting. Or is there like any part of that persistence, anything you were doing on a regular basis that helped you keep going?
I mean, I think knowing that we were solving what felt like a real problem for customers, this wasn't like a nice to have. I think that helped a lot. And then also the profitability, the reason that was such a big goal for us was because it would allow us to stop worrying about the fact that growth wasn't 30% every single month, 10 years. Like the profitability allowed us to just not care about the growth side of things. Obviously, we don't want to not be growing or like be losing more customers than we're gaining, but getting to profitability sort of just lets us kind of do whatever we want, however we want to do it. And we kind of kept operating that way before, but just had to push a little bit harder, maybe on the marketing side of things or the product side of things to like get stuff shipped, which is a good thing. But I still think the persistence was probably like the biggest thing for us, was just showing up and like keeping focused on that goal.
And you've written about this before. You guys kind of hit a rough patch for a minute where you thought you might not make it, right? Had to do some pay cuts and stuff like that.
Yep.
Which is, more normal than I think people realize and just not talked about.
Yep.
How have you maintained momentum and motivation, especially with your team, through all of that and all that hard work?
Yeah, so this time, it was almost exactly a year ago. It was mid-June of last year when I realized we had like 7 weeks of cash left in the bank. And so we had to make some pretty big adjustments. Namely, the whole team took a 15% pay cut. I took a 30% pay cut. I think the fact that we were so close to profitability made that a little bit easier. And really, it's like, no matter how you look at it, taking a pay cut or asking the whole team to take a pay cut is not a great thing. It was like the least worst option. And I think everybody realized that because I laid it out for them. I said, here are the 10 different things that I've thrown around and crunched numbers for that are potential options, including like layoffs. And the pay cut is the least terrible. And I think everybody saw that and knew that it was a temporary thing and believed in what we were doing in the fact that there's a lot more left for Baremetics to do. And I don't want that to sound like this, like we're tackling like, world hunger or anything like that, because that's not, we are not. But I think the people that work here know Baremetics is still in the really early days of like what we're capable of, not just from a product standpoint, but as a team. I think we have a really strong team, and everybody believes that everybody else on the team is super capable of what they do. And in general, it's, I feel like it's a great place to work. And so they were willing to stick through that, knowing that we would come out better on the other side, which happened. So in January, we got profitable and everybody went back up to full pay, including pay raises. And so we're in a much better spot now.
Nice. The patience pays off.
Yep.
So what's your number one goal today? And how are you tracking or measuring progress against it?
This sort of assumes that I'm extremely goal oriented. I'm not, for better or worse. And okay, so like we had profitability goal. And so like that, we hit that a few months ago, basically. But since then, it's like that shifted from this numeric goal to more like product-based goals, like shipping. We have this one of the biggest features that we've ever built that we'll start beta testing in a couple months. And that is huge for us. And so it's like the goal right now is to just ship that. And so like that's the thing that everybody's focused on. And that trickles down to like customer service, even properly setting expectations with bugs and feature requests and things like that. I think having a product specific goal can sort of permeate every role within the company. And that's kind of what we're doing right now.
As a founder and leader, like what does that decision process look like when you're deciding our goal now that we've reached profitability is going to be a product-based goal, and this is a thing that we're working on? Like what drives those decisions?
So a lot of this particular feature is something that's been essentially requested from like early on. So we've known we needed to build it. It's just from a technical standpoint is a massive challenge. And so I think it's always been on the roadmap, but it's just kept getting pushed off before because of the profitability thing, because it won't have probably an immediate impact on our revenue. It'll be more of like a retention kind of feature, or in the sense that instead of, it's one of the big reasons that people cancel now. And so it will prevent a lot of that, but that's not a fast way to make money. And because we weren't profitable before, we needed to do things that would help get us to profitability. So it just didn't make as much sense. So now that we are there, I think we're able to tackle some of the big things that we've been needing to tackle for a long time. And so like that drives my decision-making process in that way. But in general, some other things that drive that is the things that we feel like we are uniquely equipped to solve that maybe are a little risky. And like I think we like to take risks on a product side because they can have also, the big reward as well. And so that drives a lot of it too. And I don't know, we just all want to like keep working on things that are interesting. And again, the profitability thing like lets us work on things for that kind of reason, just because we want to.
Yeah. And that seems like a natural evolution of decision-making for a business.
For sure.
So Baremetics makes a specific set of metrics, that is sales, accessible and easy to understand. And like your website says, you provide metrics you can act on. What's the value of making data like that accessible to an entire team?
So I think data in and of itself can be really helpful, but it can also be harmful depending on maybe the weight that you put on it. And if you put disproportionate amount of weight on something that is also in like the wrong context or the wrong time, and it can be kind of dangerous. So like we're less interested in showing you a number and instead more interested in helping you know what to do with it. So why is your MRR what it is today? Well, it's that way because these 5 customers canceled and these 3 upgraded, and like you can see why things shift. So that happens a lot where you're just looking at a chart. You might see a dip in the chart and you're like, oh, that's terrible. But then like if you can go look and see why that number is what it is, then you can see, oh, that's right. We just had that one customer that was big and they left and we know why they left, and it's not that big of a deal. So giving people context around their data is really important for us. And I think like that sort of data is valuable to lots of different parts of the team, like not just the founder, not just the finance guy, not just the marketing person, but including like customer success people who are having to follow up with failed charges, or maybe they're also trying to help a customer upgrade to some new plan or whatever. There's all sorts of reasons why different people on the team would find it useful. And we want to make that data useful, not just in a like, oh, it looks pretty, but like, why is that number what it is, and how can we positively or negatively affect that?
Right. Yeah. That context is definitely key. Related, you recently wrote a piece, or somewhat recently, called Startups Are Not Crushing It, where you analyze the benchmarks of hundreds of SaaS companies, and you found that startup data is often presented in a misleading light. This is usually unintentional, but we've seen this too. Startups often skew data for the sake of sharing it, especially in things like pitch decks. Why do you think this is problematic for individual companies and the SaaS industry as a whole?
Why do I think it's problematic, or why do I think people do it?
Let's go with both.
Okay. So, I mean, it's problematic because it's not really true, or like it's presented, it's like a white lie in that, okay, so technically the number's correct, but the reason that you're showing it is because you're trying to influence a decision. And in reality, like that number's inflated, maybe artificially or something like that. So it's like saying, a company saying like, we've got 50 million users. Well, yeah, and then, but they fail to disclose that 49.5 million of them never came back. I know why they do it. They do it because like they have something that they're trying to get, whether that's more funding or press or something like that. But that's why it's problematic, because it's just not really true. But I think it's also problematic because it sort of skews how other founders view their own progress or their own success. And it gets like sort of overshadowed by big, crazy numbers that make for good press, but aren't reality. So I think that's why it's problematic. But I think people do it just because they've got things that they want, right? Like money or press.
For the founders looking at this data and maybe getting the wind taken from their wings, what metrics would you say that SaaS companies specifically should be focusing on and kind of ignoring these more skewed numbers? Yeah,
so I think it depends on the stage. A big thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about lately is sort of the defining what success means. So in the startup world, success is almost universally defined as like a big exit, right? Like if you can get a big exit, cool, like you've won. Or it's, getting this next big round of funding or something like that. Like, to me, that's not what most sane humans are actually after. They think that those things like will bring them some sort of happiness. You need to figure out like what it is you actually want out of your company. And maybe that's not a big exit. Maybe it is, but you have to figure that out. And then from there, that sort of influences what metrics you should be focusing on. So for us, profitability was such a big thing that things like monthly recurring revenue and our actual just net revenue were really important for us, because that's what helped us, focusing on those to grow those was really important. I think revenue is a big one. And I think probably the biggest one, if you have enough data there or enough customers to do it, would be revenue churn and in some cases user churn. Early on, that's really hard to do because you just don't have enough customers to like reliably focus on that as a number. But once you've got maybe a few hundred customers or something like that, focusing on that and reducing it is crucial, because if you've got low churn, that implies that you've got something that customers love. And on top of that, it also is a lot easier to grow the company because it's a lot cheaper to make more money from your current customers than to constantly be having to find new customers. Baremetics, for instance. So right now our churn kind of hovers anywhere between like 1% to 3% month over month. And so when we released a couple months ago, we released this new feature called Recover that lets you collect on failed charges. And so like that, we were able to get thousands and thousands of dollars in new monthly recurring revenue just from our existing customer base, because those customers are already sticking around because we're already solving a really big problem for them. And then we're able to make more money from them because we're offering more value for them. And that's a lot harder to do if you've got really high churn and people aren't sticking around because like you're not solving a core problem for them. And churn is a pretty great indicator for if you're actually properly solving some sort of business problem for them.
Yeah, that brings up another great point too. I think it's kind of, especially for new founders, easy to forget that you can charge for those features that add value.
Right.
Like you can charge more because you're adding more value.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people are just, especially first-time founders, like they're scared to ask for money, and so that like leads them to charge really low prices or have a free plan and think that like that's a good way to acquire customers. And for most people, like the whole free plan thing is not a great way to acquire customers, and they're afraid that they're going to like scare businesses away. But it's like, if you can't get businesses to pay you money, then you don't have a business.
Do you focus on lifetime value of a customer a lot as a business?
No. I mean, To me, like the lifetime value of a customer is most interesting from a cost of customer acquisition standpoint. The thing that we don't spend any money to acquire customers. So I don't use it in the sense that like, oh, okay, we average lifetime value of a customer is like $4,000. So we could spend $3,000 to acquire a customer. Like we just don't spend any money on customer acquisition at this point. So it's less interesting to me.
In one of your articles, you say focus on building a business, not a startup, which I think relates back to what you're saying about what do you want to be as a business. And that's definitely a similar mantra we run here at Gecko Board internally. Can you elaborate a bit on what that means to you and why it's important?
I don't know. I'm guilty of like just throwing around the word startup when I really probably just mean business a lot of times, mainly because the whole like startup world is still sort of where we're focused. But I think a lot of people are guilty of like playing startup and getting like caught up in the hype of a startup and reading all the articles about startups. And you guys have a podcast, we have a podcast like focused a lot on startup. It's easy to get wrapped up in that instead of just wrapped up in building a business and serving your customers, however that may be. It's important to maybe things like, reading articles or listening to podcasts or going to conferences and meetups, whatever. Those aren't inherently bad things. But when you start doing that and focusing on that more than just actually helping your customers, like you think like doing those things and consuming all of that stuff somehow will like rub off on your customers and make them like give you more money, this won't happen. So what I mean by that is focus on make tangible improvements to the business and the product and doing things that will directly impact your customers instead of like sort of just playing the game and hoping that it trickles down to them.
Right. You take a very candid approach to building the business and managing the team and communicating with the public. How would you say that's impacted Baremetics as a business, if it has?
I think, the whole sort of like publicly running a company or like making your numbers transparent or like just talking about how you run your business. So I think it's impacted Baremetics as a business it's a cornerstone of our marketing really. And that like that's sort of the angle that we take with most things. I think internally it's not as much of a direct impact as more of like a company culture kind of thing where everybody's really open. Like there's nothing that we're like hiding from each other and how we're building the business. Like nobody's really surprised by anything. And that also means they're not afraid to like bring up new ideas, which I think is really important when you're in the earlier stages of building a business.
This is a super subjective question, but would you say that company values and personality and culture impact business, not from a recruiting standpoint, but from an external attracting customer standpoint?
Certainly I think if a potential customer like sees how a company, I'm trying to think of an example here. So like Slack, for instance, has always had this like tone of like lighthearted, almost playful shtick. And I think that works super well for them. And I think that like draws people to them because it's like, it feels good and kind of campy. Follow Slack and like see what they're up to. And I think when you stay sort of top of mind for people, then that inevitably means that they'll become a customer one day when they'll be a right fit. And I think that can be the case for us too, is like time and time again, I ask new customers, like, how'd you find out about Baremetics? And a not insignificant numbers say like, I've been following Baremetics for the past 2 or 3 years, or I've been following you, like me in the stuff that like I've written or posted about running a business, for a year or whatever. And like, now I've got this business that can use Baremetics. I think that is the way that it sort of trickles down, like that whole being open about things. It's in the same way that content marketing is a long game. Like I think this sort of like transparency thing is also kind of a long game in that maybe somebody doesn't need you right away, but they will eventually. And that stuff pays off, sort of exponentially long term.
Definitely. So final question. Baremetics is 4 years old, right?
Yeah, pretty close to it.
Now that you've reached this point and are profitable, if you were going to give any piece of advice to founders who are just beginning to scale their business, what would it be?
I focus a lot more on the finance side of things. So I think I'm, as a founder, and I think a lot of founders are this way, like we think of ourselves as sort of like the visionary. Like we just kind of like sit and like think up amazing things for the company to do and what it will be and how to steer the ship or whatever. But it's easy to like push the numbers to the side and we're talking like actual finance stuff, like whether you're profitable or what your profit margins are, like that kind of thing. It's easy to be like, we're growing every month, so it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. And I think like being focused on those things rather than later is super important, especially when it comes to like hiring, because hiring is by far like the most expensive thing you'll do. And it's easy to let that get away from you if you're not focused on what it means the long term to have an employee and give them raises and provide health insurance and all this stuff. It's easy to be really sort of hands off with that stuff. And I think you should probably be a lot more hands on. At least I know that was the case for me.
Thanks. I think that's a great point to wrap up at. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Thank you for listening to Gecko Board's Secrets for Scaling podcast. If you've been enjoying Secrets for Scaling, please consider giving us a review on iTunes. We'd appreciate it.